There's a moment in every family where somebody says something so loud, so wrong, so aimed directly at you like a dart thrown across a dinner table, that the whole room stops breathing at once. I've been alive for 68 years. I've been a father for 39 of them. I've been patient and quiet and diplomatic in ways that would make a monk feel lazy. And on one Thursday in November, sitting at a table covered in food I did not cook, surrounded by people I did not choose, I finally stopped being diplomatic. Welcome to Daddy's Revenge. Make yourself comfortable because this one goes deep, and it does not go where you think it is going. Stay with me all the way to the end, because the last part of this story is the part that changes everything you thought you understood about the beginning. I want to tell you something about Thanksgiving before I tell you about that night. Thanksgiving in our family has never been what you see in the commercials. It has never been golden light and laughing children and a beautiful turkey sitting perfectly in the center of a long table. Our Thanksgiving has always been more like a pressure cooker that somebody forgot to check. Too many opinions in too small a room with too much wine and not enough space between chairs. I say that with love. Every single one of those people is mine, and I would do anything for them. But love and comfort are not the same thing, and our family has always been better at the first one than the second. Now, before I tell you what happened at that table, I need you to understand something about my daughter-in-law, Gwendolyn. Because if I let you make up your mind about her too early, you're going to get her completely wrong. Gwendolyn is not a bad person. She is a complicated person. She is a woman who came from very little and worked extremely hard to build a life that looked like everything she was told she would never have. I understood that about her, even when I did not like her. And I want you to hold that understanding like a small stone in your hand, because you're going to need it later. She had made a green bean casserole that Thanksgiving. Now I will say this carefully, because I am a man who tries to be fair. That casserole had not been made with love. It had been made with competition. It sat on the table in a dish that still had the store sticker on the bottom, and every single person at that table could see the sticker, but nobody said a word because that is what families do. We see the sticker, and we say nothing. My son Gerald sat beside her, beaming like a man who had been told what expression to wear and practiced it in the mirror that morning. Gerald has a talent for performing happiness. It is not always the same as feeling it. My younger son Terrence was there with his girlfriend Nadine, a calm, quiet woman from Louisiana who speaks slowly and means every single word, and whom I have liked completely since the first afternoon I met her. Nadine had brought a real sweet potato pie from scratch, and it was sitting at the end of the table minding its own business, absolutely perfect and completely unbothered. My granddaughter Cora was there, 9 years old, eating her roll in 2 bites and staring at the ceiling like she was doing math nobody asked her to do. Kids know more than we give them credit for. She knew something was off that night. I saw it on her face. My brother Warren was there too. Warren is 71 years old and has never once in his life said anything at the wrong moment, because he has trained himself over 7 decades to wait until the moment is exactly right before he opens his mouth. He was watching Gwendolyn that night the way he watches everything. Quietly, carefully, like a man who has learned that the most important information in any room is never the loudest thing in the room. He had already poured himself a glass of water and pushed the wine to the side, which told me he was paying close attention. Warren only drinks water when he is thinking hard. We talked about the things you talk about. Cora's school play that had gone slightly off the rails when the boy playing the tree fell into the boy playing the sun. Terrence's new truck. Whether the grocery store near Warren's house was actually going to close, or whether that was just a rumor started by the woman at the end of his block who starts all the rumors. Nadine said 3 sentences that were each more interesting than everything else said in the previous 10 minutes. That is simply who she is. And Gwendolyn talked. She talked the way someone talks when they're nervous and covering it with noise. I noticed that. I filed it quietly away. Gerald is my oldest. 39 years old, tall, looks like his mother in the eyes, and like me in the jaw, which means he has a face that people either trust immediately or find difficult to read. He has always been a builder, not just in his work, though he is good at his work, but in his whole way of moving through the world. He builds things. He builds plans and systems and structures, and he builds the image of his life the way you build a wall, one brick at a time, very carefully, making sure nothing shows through the gaps. He loves Gwendolyn. I believe that completely. But love between two people and honesty between two people are sometimes on very different schedules. Gwendolyn had been talking about their new car for a few minutes, not mentioning it once, which would be normal, but circling back to it the way people circle back to something when they need someone to notice it. The color, the seats, how much Cora loved riding in it. I listened and I ate, and I said appropriate things at appropriate times, and I watched Gerald's face while she talked because Gerald's face was doing something interesting. It was very still, too still. The face of a man who has practiced not reacting to a specific topic for long enough that the practice itself has become visible. I would understand that stillness completely before the night was over. I want you to notice something about that dinner table. Everything looked fine. The food was on the plates. The candles were lit. Cora was on her second roll. Warren was refilling his water. Nadine was listening to Terrence tell a story about the truck with the kind of patient, gentle attention that made you feel like the story was more interesting than it was. On the surface, everything was ordinary. But underneath the surface, underneath the green bean casserole with the sticker still on the dish and the talk about the new car and the careful stillness on Gerald's face, something else was sitting at that table with us. Something that had been waiting for a long time for someone to say its name out loud. Gwendolyn said my name. Not softly, not in the middle of the sentence. She said it the way you say something when you want a room to stop and listen. She set her fork down and she looked at me from across the table and she said, "Arthur." I looked up. "I want to say something," she said. Terrence went quiet. Nadine went still. Warren set his water glass down without a sound. Even Cora looked over from her roll. And Gwendolyn, with the particular energy of a woman who has been saving something up for a long time and has finally decided tonight is the night to spend it, looked me directly in the eyes and said, "I think you are genuinely the most negative person in this entire family." She paused. She looked around the table the way someone looks when they expect applause, or at least agreement. Nobody moved. Nobody made a sound. She kept going. "You question everything Gerald does. You make him feel small. You have made him feel small his entire life." And honestly, she tilted her head at me. "I think everyone here feels it. You are just the person no one has been brave enough to say it to directly." The table went so quiet that I could hear Cora breathing. I could hear the furnace turning on somewhere in the back of the house. Warren's hand was flat on the table beside his water glass, very still, like a man holding himself in place. Gerald did not look at me. I want you to hold that. Gerald looked at his plate. He moved a piece of turkey from one side to the other side, and he kept his eyes down, and he said absolutely nothing. Not one word. Not her name. Not my name. Not a single syllable in defense of either one of us. He simply was not there. And here's the thing about having a child for 39 years. You know every version of them. You know them at 7 years old, crying in the back of your car. You know them at 16, trying to be brave about something that was scaring them completely. You know every sound and every silence. And that silence, Gerald's silence at that table, was one I recognized. It was the silence of a man who needed something to end, but did not know how to end it himself. I sat with all of that for a moment. I let it settle like dust after something falls. Then I reached out, and I set my glass down on the table. Deliberately. Completely calm. Gwendolyn was still looking at me with an expression that was losing confidence 1 second at a time, because I had not reacted the way she had expected, and uncertain people always reveal more in the silence than they intended to. I looked at her. Not hard. Not cold. Simply direct. "Gwendolyn," I said to her evenly, "let me ask you something." She straightened a little. "Okay," she said. But the single word had lost whatever force she had started the evening with. "That car you were telling us about tonight," I said slowly. "The new one. The one with the seats Cora loves. Tell me, how would you feel if you woke up tomorrow morning and found out that car did not actually belong to you?" She blinked. The room had not started breathing again yet. "What? How would you feel?" I continued in exactly the same calm, even voice. "If you found out that the name on that car, the title, the registration, none of it was yours, that had never been yours, That doesn't make any sense, Gwendolyn said to me. Her voice had changed. The performance was gone. Underneath the performance, there was something real, and the real thing was afraid. I'm asking you a simple question, I said to her pleasantly. You asked me one. I'm asking you one back. She looked at Gerald, and Gerald, my son Gerald, looked up from his plate for the first time all evening, and he looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before in 39 years. It was not anger. It was not surprise. It was the look of a man watching a door open that he has been holding closed for a very long time with everything he had. Dad, Gerald said. His voice was low and rough, and there was a whole conversation inside that one word. I looked at him. I'm just making conversation, I said pleasantly, and I picked my glass back up. Terrence cleared his throat. Nadine very gently put her hand over his on the table. Warren picked up his water glass and drank from it slowly, and when he set it back down, he looked at me across the table and gave me the smallest possible nod. 1 millimeter. Nobody else caught it. Warren and I have been brothers for 68 years, and we do not always need words. Gwendolyn was very quiet. Not the silence of someone who has nothing to say. The silence of someone doing rapid calculations in their head. Recalculating. Reassessing. Trying to figure out what she had walked into and whether her question had been the door or the wall. Cora, bless her, picked up her fork and said loudly that she wanted more pie, and Nadine said she would cut her a piece, and the table made a small, grateful shift towards something that felt almost normal. But it was not normal. Something had been opened that Thanksgiving evening that could not be closed again. Not that night. Not over dessert. Not ever. She already knew something was not right. I could see it now that I was looking for it. Not the performance of the casserole and the car and the loud opinions about me. Underneath all of that, there was a woman who had felt the ground under her feet shifting for a while and had not been able to figure out why. And what I had just said to her had not created that fear. It had simply confirmed it, named it, given it a shape. Sometimes the most terrifying thing in the world is not hearing bad news. It is discovering that the thing you were afraid to look at was actually real. I refilled my water. Outside, the wind had picked up, and the window behind Warren was making a soft sound like it was trying to say something. Now I need to tell you what I knew. I need to tell you what I had been carrying for 7 months. Since a Tuesday in April, when Gerald called me at 6 in the morning with a voice I had not heard from him since he was a teenager, low and ashamed and very young sounding inside the body of a 39-year-old man. 7 months of a secret that was not mine, but that had been placed in my hands because I was his father and because there was nowhere else to put it. But before I can tell you what the secret was, I need to tell you what it cost me to carry it, because you will not understand the weight of it unless I show you first. Nobody tells you this about keeping a secret for someone you love. They tell you it is an act of loyalty. They tell you it means you are a good parent or a good person. What they do not tell you is that every single morning you wake up with it, and it is heavier than it was the night before. They do not tell you that you will have entire conversations with people you love while the secret sits in a room with you like a third person everyone can feel, but nobody can see. I am a 68-year-old man who has slept well his entire adult life. In those 7 months, I slept the way soldiers sleep. One ear always open, always waiting for the thing to finally arrive. The morning after Thanksgiving, I was up at 5:45. I had made coffee, and I was standing in my kitchen window, looking at nothing in particular when Terrence called. He did not say good morning. He said, "What was that last night?" Terrence has always been direct. He gets it from his mother, who is the most direct person I have ever known in my life and whom I miss every single day. "That was dinner," I said to Terrence. "Dad, it was a dinner table conversation," I said. "People talk at dinner." "You told her the car might not be hers," Terrence said slowly, like he was arranging the words in the right order to understand them. I asked her a hypothetical question. "Dad, I grew up in this house. I know what your hypothetical questions are." I almost smiled. Terrence is right. I have never in my life asked a hypothetical question that was actually hypothetical. Every question I have ever asked that sounded like it was about a general idea was actually about a very specific real thing. Terrence knows this. Gerald has always known it too. Gwendolyn was simply the last person in the room to learn it. "Is Gerald in trouble?" Terrence asked me, and his voice was quieter now. Not loud and direct. Quiet and direct. There is a difference, and Terrence knows the difference. I set my coffee mug down. I looked out the window at the morning light coming up gray and slow over the yard. 7 months, I had been keeping this. 7 months of watching my oldest son reassemble himself every time he called me. Every time I heard him pretending everything was fine in a voice that had the particular stretched quality of something being held together past its natural limit. "You need to talk to Gerald," I said to Terrence. "I'm talking to you." "Talk to Gerald," I said again. "And Terrence, pay attention over the next few days. Things are moving." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "How bad is it?" "Talk to Gerald," I said for the third time. We hung up at 6:12. At 6:44, Gerald was calling. I let it ring 3 times before I picked up. Not because I was angry, because I needed those 3 rings to decide which version of his father Gerald was going to get that morning. The one who softens things, or the one who loves him enough not to. I picked up. "Dad." Gerald's voice came through the phone in a way that told me everything I needed to know before another word was spoken. Rough, dry. The voice of a man who has been awake since before the sun and has been staring at the same wall the entire time. "Gerald," I said. "She's asking questions," he said to me. "She's been asking questions since last night." "I imagine she has," I said. "Dad, I need you to just..." He stopped. Started again. "I need you to let me handle this." I did not say anything for a moment. Outside, a bird was singing somewhere in the yard, something small and ordinary and completely indifferent to the conversation happening inside my kitchen. "Gerald," I said, and I kept my voice as even as I could, because what I was about to say mattered and I did not want the delivery to be the thing he heard instead of the words. "I have let you handle this since April." Silence. "That car payment," I said to him. "It came for me in June, in August, and last month." I heard him exhale, long and slow and painful, the kind of exhale that is not really about breathing. "The registration renewal," I continued. "I handled that in September because you asked me to and because I thought you were about to tell her, and I did not want things to fall apart before you had the chance." Silence. "Son," I said it gently, "I have been the wall between your life and the truth of it for 7 months, and I'm stepping back from that wall now. Not to hurt you, because I love you too much to keep standing there." He did not speak for almost a full minute. I sat with that. I have learned over many years that the most important moments in a conversation are very often the quiet ones. The places where someone is not talking and is instead becoming someone slightly different than who they were 30 seconds ago. Gerald was doing that. I could feel it through the phone the way you can sometimes feel weather changing before it actually changes. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Still rough, but different in a way that was not worse. It was more honest, which in this case was the same thing as more hopeful. "She's going to be so angry," Gerald said. "Yes," I told him simply. "She's going to feel like a fool," he said. "She might," I said, "for a moment. And then she's going to feel like a wife who was not trusted with the truth of her own life. And that second thing is going to matter much more than the first." He was quiet. "I didn't want her to think I had failed," Gerald said. "Not to me, not really. More like to himself. More like a man saying the true thing out loud for the first time to hear what it actually sounds like in the air." I let it sit there. It deserved the space. "She married you," I said to him finally. "She did not marry the version of you that has no problems. That man does not exist. Nobody is married to that man. She married you, the real one. And the real one needed to let her in a long time ago." He breathed, in and out, once, twice. "Okay," he said, barely a word, small and tired and real. "Okay," I said back. We stayed on the phone together for a little while longer without talking much. Sometimes that is what fathers and sons do. They just stay on the line with each other while both of them figure out where the ground is. Gwendolyn called Gerald's mother. I should say, she called Gerald's mother's sister, his Aunt Bev, because his mother, my Dorothy, has been gone for 11 years now, and there are still moments when that absence is the loudest thing in a room. Bev is 81 years old, sharp and warm, and very fond of Gwendolyn in a way that has always been slightly baffling to me and completely genuine. Gwendolyn called Bev on Friday evening, and I know this because Bev called me 20 minutes later and said, "Arthur, That girl is scared. I told Bev what I could tell her, which was not everything, but was enough. Gerald told Terrence first. He called him Saturday morning and laid it out. Everything. The payments he had missed. The investment that had looked safe and had not been safe at all. The way the whole thing had started to slide in February, and by April was moving fast enough that he had not known how to stop it. And he told Terrence about me. About the calls in April and May. About every wire transfer. About the thing I had been doing in the background for 7 months that Gwendolyn had not known about, and that Terrence had not known about either. Terrence called me after. His voice was tight. Not angry. Processing. You should have told me, he said to me. You could have helped. I thought about that for a second. I know, I said to him honestly. I made the wrong call there. I thought your brother was about to get back on his feet, and I did not want to embarrass him in front of you before he had the chance. That was my mistake. Terrence was quiet for a moment. Then he said, is he going to lose everything? Not if he stops trying to do it alone, I said. Okay, Terrence said. And then, is there something I can do? And I want you to hold that, because that right there, my youngest son asking what he could do, is the first place in this whole story where the weight actually began to move. Gerald sat down with Gwendolyn on Saturday night. Not Sunday morning, not after more time to think. Saturday night. He sent me a text at 10:14 that night. It said only, I told her. 3 words. No punctuation. No explanation. I held my phone, and I sat with those 3 words for a long time. Because it is a very particular feeling, knowing that your child has done the hard thing. The thing they have been running from. The thing that was going to cost them something real and unavoidable. And knowing that you did not do it for them. You simply made it impossible to keep not doing it. That is the whole job sometimes. Gwendolyn called me on Saturday night at 11:47. I was still awake. I had been awake. She did not yell. I had prepared for yelling. I had rehearsed the calm responses to yelling. I did not need them. Her voice, when she called me, was stripped clean of everything I had heard from her across the dinner table on Thanksgiving. The performance was gone. The competition was gone. What was left sounded very tired and very young and very real. Were you ever going to tell me? She asked me. I was waiting for Gerald to tell you, I said to her. And when it became clear he was not going to do it on his own, I gave him a push. At Thanksgiving dinner, she said. Not a question, a statement, with a very specific tone attached to it. Yes, I said simply. That could have been done differently, she said to me. It could have, I agreed. But I've been watching my son drown for 7 months, and I needed him to stop having reasons to wait another day. She was quiet on the line for a moment. When she spoke again, some of the edge had shifted. How much? She asked me. And she asked it the same way you ask a doctor for a test result when you already know the news is not going to be good. Straightforward. No softening. Just clear. I told her the number. I heard her breath change. Heard the way a person sounds when math lands on them from a height. All of that, she said quietly. Not a question. More like a person pressing on something to understand its size. All of that, I confirmed. A pause. He was protecting me, she said. And she said it as if she was still deciding how to feel about it. Not with anger. With the particular exhausted tenderness of someone who loves a person and is frustrated and moved by the exact same thing simultaneously. He was trying to, I said. He should have trusted me, she said. Yes, I said. He should have. And he knows that now. She did not say thank you. She did not have to. I did not need it. What I heard in her voice in those last few seconds before we hung up was something more important than gratitude. It was resolution. A woman who had arrived at the edge of something frightening and was deciding that she was not going to look away from it, that she was going to look directly at it and deal with it and not be the person who pretended the ground was solid when it was not. I admired her for that. I hung up the phone and sat in my kitchen in the quiet house and thought about Dorothy and what she would have said about all of it. Dorothy would have handled it better. I know this with complete certainty. She would have found a way to hold Gwendolyn and Gerald together with both hands while also telling the truth. She had a gift for holding things at the same time that I have never fully learned. I can hold one thing very firmly. Dorothy could hold 4 at once without dropping any of them. But she is not here. I am here, and I do what I can with the hands I have. I went to their house on Monday. I did not call ahead. I have learned over the course of my life that some conversations cannot survive the warning. I pulled into their driveway at 9 in the morning and sat in the car for a moment looking at the house. It is a nice house. A real house. The kind of house that took work to get and would take more work to keep. There was a bicycle leaning against the porch that belonged to Cora and a wreath on the door that Gwendolyn had probably put up the week before Thanksgiving, and there was nothing about looking at that house that was not worth fighting for. I got out of the car. The air was cold. My breath made small clouds. I knocked. Gerald opened the door. He looked like he had slept, but not well. Like a man who had crossed something exhausting and arrived on the other side still standing, but only just... He stepped back and let me in without saying a word. Gwendolyn was in the living room. Not performing. Not presenting. Just sitting on the couch with a mug of something warm and her feet pulled up, and she looked at me when I came in, and the look was clear and direct and completely without the dinner table version of herself. It was a different person. The real one. "Arthur," she said to me. "Gwendolyn," I said back. I sat down in the chair across from them. Gerald sat beside Gwendolyn, not apart from her. That told me a lot. I reached into my coat pocket and I put a folded piece of paper on a coffee table. Gerald looked at it. He knew what it was. "I want you to look at that," I said to them both. "Both of you. Together." Gwendolyn reached for it before Gerald did. She unfolded it slowly and she looked at it, and I watched her face do the things that a face does when a number that has been abstract becomes real. Gerald looked at the wall. "Look at it with her," I said to him. Gerald turned and looked at the paper, at the number, at every line beneath it, and I watched my son sit with the full true size of the thing he had been trying to keep small for 7 months. "I am not asking for it back," I said to them both clearly. "That is done. That money went where it needed to go, and I am at peace with it. But you cannot fix what you have not fully seen, and I needed you to see it. Together. Not separately. Together." Gwendolyn set the paper down between them on the cushion, and she looked at Gerald for a long, steady moment. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked him. Gerald was quiet for a moment. He was looking at the paper. Then he looked up at her, and what he said was the truest thing I heard from him in 39 years. He said, "Because I built something with you that I was proud of. And when it started to crack, I was so afraid you would look at me differently that I chose the crack over the truth." The room was very quiet. Gwendolyn looked at him for a long time. I looked at my hands. Some conversations do not belong to anyone but the two people having them. "You chose wrong," she said to him. Simply, without cruelty, just clearly. "I know," he said. "You do not get to protect me from our life," she said. "Our life is mine too. Every part of it." Gerald nodded. He was not holding himself together in the careful, practiced way he had been holding himself together for months. He had let go of that. What was left looked smaller and more solid and more like the actual person I raised. He reached for her hand. She let him take it, and then she said something to him that I did not expect, something that made me understand her completely for the first time. She said, "I grew up with nothing. I know how to handle nothing. What I cannot handle is being kept outside of my own life." She said it quietly. No drama, no performance, just the plain, absolute truth of it. And Gerald looked at her, and something in his whole body changed the way a room changes when you finally open the window. He put his other hand over hers. I stood up. I picked up my coat from the arm of the chair. "I'll leave you two to it," I said. Gwendolyn looked up at me. "Thank you, Arthur," she said. Not warmly exactly. Honestly, which meant more. I drove home in the late morning light. The sky had the particular clean look it gets in late November when the clouds have passed and everything is sharp and cold and clear. I thought about Gerald at 7 years old, showing me something he had built out of blocks in the living room. So proud of it, watching my face to see if I was proud too. I thought about how that never actually changes. Children become adults, but the need to show their father something they build does not go away. It just gets quieter, more hidden, more complicated. I thought about Gwendolyn's face when she said she grew up with nothing and knew how to handle it. I thought about how much I had underestimated her, and for how long. I thought about how easy it is to decide who someone is before you have seen who they are, when everything stops being a performance and becomes plain. I thought about Terrence and Nadine, and the way Nadine had put her hand over Terrence's at the dinner table the night before as quietly and naturally as breathing. I thought about Warren and his water glass and his 1 millimeter nod and 68 years of brotherhood that had never once needed to be loud to be real. I got home. I made coffee. I sat in the kitchen in the quiet, and I thought about Dorothy the way I always think about Dorothy when something large has moved in our family. She would have known the whole time how this was going to end. She always knew. She had a way of seeing the shape of things before they arrived. I have spent 11 years trying to learn how to do that. I am not there yet, but I'm a little closer. I sat in the quiet of my kitchen, and I let the whole 7 months put itself down. All of it. The April phone call, the payments, the Thanksgiving table, Gerald's silence, and then Gerald's truth, Gwendolyn's fear, and then Gwendolyn's clarity. And here's what I know. Being a father does not mean protecting your children from every hard thing. It means making sure that when the hard thing arrives, they are not standing in the dark alone. It means standing close enough that your shadow is there even if your hand is not. Gerald is going to be all right. Not because the money is fixed or the problem has disappeared, but because he told the truth to the person who deserved it most, and the person who deserved it did not leave. She moved closer, and that is everything. That is the whole story. That is what all of it was ever actually about. I put on some music, something soft, something Dorothy would have liked. Outside, the November sky had gone deep blue and cold, and the last of the day was thinning out at the edges the way days do in late autumn when the light remembers it is almost done and tries to make the last few minutes mean something. I sat there and I let them mean something. If this story meant something to you, we would love it if you joined the Daddy's Revenge family. Hit that like button and subscribe. We'll be here every week. Real stories, real people, real love doing what real love does.